one of the main criticisms that you'll hear from comic book readers nowadays is that perhaps there's too much social commentary and whatnot. And I think it goes a little bit deeper than that. I think that a lot of creators are putting entertainment to the side instead of putting entertainment first and then adding social commentary on top of that. I think that's one of the reasons that a lot of these things stand out so much. And here to talk with you about that is the writer of Here Comes Calico, H. Durbin. How you doing, H?
Doing very well. Happy New Year. Happy New Year, Wes.
Happy New Year. I hope you're doing very well. You know what's interesting, obviously, with your series, Here Comes Calico, there's certainly a message to it. Animal rights and things of that nature are certainly front and center on there, but it never feels like you're, killing the story at the expense of getting that part of the story over. And I think that's one of the things that we're really seeing a lot in mainstream comics.
Many people thought that we had a PSA. This was supposed to be some kind of public service announcement, comic book. In fact, a lot of the interviews out there that you hear about these comic book veterans who read the series, they talk about, hey, this is going to be Captain Planet or something like that. And when they actually turn the page, they're just blown away because it's an actual comic book. We put action first.
Obviously you've been reading comic books all your life. When did this start happening? Where we kind of saw it more in mainstream comedy. It's almost like a creep where it happened, slowly over time, where the entertainment got pushed to the wayside, and it's not the primary focus of the work anymore.
There's a generational component to it that I don't think we talk about it much. There's a cultural component to it. And of course, there's a corporate component to it. So all these things sort of came and converted around the same time. So when I was coming up, you had to work hard and you had to sort of, I don't want to offend today's creatives or workers. What I'm saying is there was a different climate in how you operate. Okay, you really had to go in there and roll your sleeves up and get things done one way or another. And I think today, and I say this very confidently, in fact, because I do have a brother that is a millennial, and he has a very different approach to the way he works. And it's more about, all right, well, let me do my thing, and you do your thing, and hey, the company gets there, or maybe it doesn't. And it's more of an individual approach to a collective approach. The company's approach is, we have to tell this story. We have to get this thing done. Now it's more about, well, I have this thing that I want to tell, and maybe I can get an editor to sort of go with what I want. And it's a cool thing, and let's see if it works or not. I'm going to give you an example. Wolverine is a remarkably intense character, okay? That is unequivocal. Okay, I picked up last year a comic book, or this year I should say, because it's still not over. I think it was Wolverine #5. And 80% of that comic book, I would say even 90%, was just walking around. There was a vampire around there, a couple of vampires walking around. There was discussion. They were sitting at a table talking about, some action. And then Wolverine comes out of the bushes for one page. And then at the end, there's some fighting. So in total, it was about 2 pages in a 24-page comic book of action. This was not happening back when I was reading comic books in the 80s and 90s. Okay, Wolverine in any comic book, there were going to be doors broken, teeth were going to fly, and you were lucky if you got out of that comic book without a page of, maybe 1 page of talking, and that was it. It's a different time, a different place, and that is showing up in these comic books. And I was shocked when I saw that early this year.
I do think there's a generational component, because if you look at like the first great wave of comic book writers, when we think of superheroes, your Stan Lees, your Jack Kirby's, your Joe Simons, they all have something in common besides being in New York and making comic books. And I believe they're all Jewish, but they all went and they fought in the war effort. Like, they had real life experience. They wouldn't put everything on the line and kind of put themselves in harm's way. So they brought that kind of mentality to the books, and they also knew that kids needed something to look up to, something to strive for. And I think that's what they saw these superheroes as these figures for children to aspire to kind of teach good morals and things like that. You look at like the next generation, Jim Shooter, his family was really poor. When he was 14 years old, he dropped out of school, and he literally studied comic books and submitted a story to DC, a Legion superhero story, and was professionally writing comic books as a teenager so he could help his family make ends meet. I don't think there are very many comic creators in today's environment that would ever have an experience like that, where your family was in such dire straits that you literally had to quit your schooling and go and try and help provide support. So he would bring something like that, to where I'm not creating the greatest comic book ever, I might not be able to help out my family who needs money. I think we're at an era now with a generation. I think they grew up and thinking about Watchmen, thinking about, God Loves, Man Kills, and thinking about comic books as a vehicle for the message. And so I think we're definitely in a generational period where they just look at the medium completely different than you or I, and really the readers a lot of times.
Well, look at what you're talking about in the action. So we live in passive aggressive times. Okay. Before, fighting was in your face, direct. And today in the office versus back in the day, you were fighting tooth and nail for your job, and you were showing up really early, leaving late, getting this thing done. Today it's like, all right, we're going to show up, and then we're going to be nice to you. And then what we'll do is we'll wait for you to say something that we don't like. And then what we're going to do is we're going to come around and we're going to build up this mob, and we're going to go ahead and cancel you. Okay. And you see it in comic books. If you really pay attention to the action, okay, which used to be very direct, confrontational, let's get this done. You look at the action, what we call action today, in these comics, it's a very, very passive aggressive approach to doing this. Discussions, sitting around plotting, people huddling together. Oh, this is how we're going to go ahead and get that guy. We're going to get that guy removed. I saw the other day these two little guys walking around. Oh, the Island Boys or something like this. I'm like, what the heck is going on here? What even is this? This would have never happened. Okay, in the 90s and 80s. Okay, I don't want to sound again like the old man. I love all sorts of music. Classical, rock, hip hop, and I was a big fan of hip hop back in the 90s. And you had just wonderful, wonderful creativity. Every other day there was a different kind of band with a different sound. You had the gangster rap. You had the dance kind of rap. Run DMC back in the 80s. They were more like a very they had this style about them. Okay, and they used the heavy beats. And then you had something like Cypress Hill, which is very sort of like a surfer kind of weed kind of guys with like graffiti, really bringing in the culture and aspects of hip hop. Then you had dance hip hop, like Kid and Play. It was more about dancing. You had a lot of tonalities and textures to the music. Okay, and when I hear it now, it's like it's the same thing. It's like dubba 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 na na na, and it sounds like everything. It's like
with mechanical voiceover and all that stuff.
Everybody has the same style. And we had so many different styles. Milli Vanilli was a top act back in the 80s and 90s. It only took 1 second back then, and it was done. That's what I'm saying.
It's also interesting. Another thing, when you think of like, I hate to admit this, I've read a little bit of the Hunger Games.
Right.
If you ever read that, as soon as action starts in that book, and there's a lot of battles. As soon as the action starts, the main protagonist, I think her name's Katniss, she like gets knocked out, and then she wakes up after the battle is over. So it's like, even in the books that these writers today are kind of raised on, like action is put in the background is maybe not the most important part of the story. So I think that's kind of where it crept into, where we're not really getting people that grew up on comic books, or at least classic comic books, that it had really changed the vehicle as far as being an action-based medium, because it doesn't feel action-based medium. It almost feels like it's a food-based medium. You sit down at a table, you eat, and you have conversations about all the wonderful things that you could be doing in comic books.
Listen, I personally have a very Lombardian approach to comics, right down your throat. And that's, if you, right on our first page, we hit you. So this is part of the reason why our comics are standing out. But this is not what I'm seeing when I see these comics today. And I think, we're hitting on this. The other part is the corporate component to this. There's a desire to conform. There's a lot of, once you start getting corporations involved, then all of a sudden the charts come out. Okay, the spreadsheets.
Yeah, they've got the formula.
Right.
This has worked the last 3 times, so everything that we do from here on out will be this.
Right.
And everything gets watered down. You look at the MCU right now, where every film, when they first came out, they were all unique. You had like Kenneth Branagh on a Thor movie, felt completely different tonally than the Iron Man movie, which felt completely different totally than the Captain America movie. And then now they've all kind of got the same humor. They've got the same basic story beats. And there's about 2 or 3 different main story lines that they do, but they just kind of do them over and over and over again. obviously Spider-Man No Way Home feels like it's an exception where they did something that was truly mind-breaking that people weren't expecting. But, once you get used to it, you can see it coming. It's no longer entertaining.
Comic books, we have 22 to 24 pages to get your attention, okay? The reason why video games, even back then and to this day, have been successful is because they're truly an immersive experience. I loved, as a 16, 17-year-old, turn on that TV, and I knew I was going to be in for a few hours I was going to leave my little apartment, okay, my little room in the Bronx, okay? I was going to leave that, and I was going to be in a jungle with, I don't know, with an M16. And then, boom, I turn it off, and I'm back in my bed, relaxing and, getting ready for the next day. Comic books, I've heard some of these experts say, I read comic books and I read a comic book in 2 or 3 or 5 minutes or something like that. That wasn't the case for me. You know why? Because those comic books were incredibly immersive. I couldn't finish
one back in the
comic
day, you can't read those in that time. The amount of story that they packed in on those 24 pages, there literally wasn't an inch wasted. There
Right.
wasn't a speech bubble that wasn't impactful. Everything had to have a purpose. The way that they've kind of decompressed the stories, what would take one issue back in the day might be 3 or even 6 issues nowadays, where they really just pad things out, and you get a lot of double page spreads with literally nothing happening. Like, I don't know why this is important. I mean, it's beautiful art. There's no denying that. But is it in purpose of the story? Is it moving things forward? What is the actual imagery or the event that you're seeing? How does it express the creator's story that they're telling? And a lot of times it's just cool.
I think we've hit the point where all of these items are funneling down into style over skill. Okay, when I read that Wolverine comic book that I referenced before, man, it looked nice.
There goes Victor Bogdanovich. You're damn right, it looked good.
Yeah, it looked really nice. I said, whoa, this is great. And look at this, the paper and all this, because, we're used to newsprint, because all we do is publish newsprint comics. And man, this looks nice. But after I was done, I said, wow, I can't believe I just wasted this time doing, reading this stuff. And yeah, like I said, it looks great, but the substance just isn't there.
So what's interesting, obviously I have my channel here, and, I want to open people's minds and say, hey, these are some of the failings that are happening right now in the comic book industry. Here's some of the things that I think where it's going right. Obviously, you've taken a different approach. You have Here Comes Calico. You've had 3 issues come out so far. In your crowdfunding issue number 4, I believe the Kickstarter is live right now.
Yeah. Our approach is you really have to leave them wanting for more. It's like cooking. You want to be begging for seconds. My mother's an incredible cook. And when I hit that
you want them so full they can't handle seconds. I'll have to come back to get my seconds tomorrow because you've given me such a complete meal here, but I still want more because it tasted so yummy. Yes.
Oh, I want them sick. I want them to still go for it and then go to the hospital for it. I want them to be so begging for this stuff. And this is why we do it. So we have the Kickstarter. It's issue 4. It's our approach. Again, Lombardian approach to comics. It's right in your face, and it's full of action. I'm going to tell you this right now. I can tell you a ton of things about our comic book series, Here Comes Calico. And everything that's going to come out of my mouth is very biased. But I'm going to tell you the following things. I'm going to ask you, all of you who are watching this video, to do something. I'm going to tell you that our comic books are not like the comic books of today. They're printed on newsprint. They're hardcore 90s style comics is what we hear, but we're not going after that. We're going after compelling, substantive, skill-based stories with incredible art, good writing, and a focused storyline. Our topic is fighting animal abuse, but like Wes, you mentioned earlier, that's not what we lead with. We lead with the story and the quality and the skill, because we know that entertainment is number one. We're trying to entertain you. We're trying to tell a story that's going to have you keep coming back for more. Okay, and the last thing I'll say on this is ignore everything I just said, okay, if you don't want to take my bias, because it was bias, okay? Go to Kickstarter.com, type in Sigma Comics. You're going to see Here Comes Calico number 4. Disregard all of the content that's below the top video, because we created that. The video on top is tons of wonderful comic book veterans, just like Wes, who've read the comic. They have something to say about it. These people, just like Wes, they haven't just been reading comic books for years. They haven't been reading comic books for decades. They've been reading comic books for generations, and they truly understand the art form of American Western comics. Please, every single person who's watching this video, please, that's where we are right now in this story of comics.
There's a link in the video description, and I will say this also: this comic book is not for the faint of heart. If you don't like excessive amounts of violence, i.e., in the John Wick, kind of style, you might not. This might not be the comic book for you. But if you like a little bit of violence that goes along with your entertainment, you're probably going to enjoy this because you go hard in the paint there, HH. I'm just going to tell you that.
Yeah, that's an understatement, Wes, and thank you for bringing that up. We do not pull punches. This is a very serious topic. Animal abuse is something that's very near and dear to our hearts. We love animals, and frankly, we're not going to have it. We're going to bring it right down your throat.
All right, well, I do want to say thank you very much to HH. All the people at Sigma Comics, congratulations on Here Comes Calico #4, and definitely best of luck in the campaign, and I hope you set new high benchmarks than your previous campaigns.
Thank you, buddy. Really appreciate you, Wes. You do a great thing on this show, and thank you for supporting the indies like us. It's really hard going up against Marvel and DC. What they're doing isn't great, but we're trying to put out some great comics, and it's because of people like you. You're helping us out. Thank you.